Welcome to Ride the Stream. I am Travis, and with me is co-host Michelle. We are here to talk about TV and movies. I am a fiction writer and write for a couple different entertainment sites, uh, talking about TV, movies. So I'm happy to have the opportunity to chat with a very dear friend. And we've been talking about doing this for a while.
We
Um, and yeah, Michelle, how are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad that we're finally getting this off the ground. I think it's been several months since we've been talking about doing this. And of course, we've known each other for several years now, I think. I can't
Uh,
remember when we first started collaborating.
Eight,
Has it
somewhere
been?
around there.
Wow,
Yeah.
a long time. Well, we first started collaborating through Fan-Based Press, your Geeky Parent Guide, when you were developing that. And I was your cohort editor and bounce ideas off of and things like that. And the friendship just grew from that.
Yeah. It was such a huge help. And those chats developed beyond GPG where we just were like talking about our days and our weeks and what was going on, and we just kept those chats going, which is always part of my favorite parts of the week whenever we get to chat. So,
Yeah, same here. So a little bit about me, I guess, is that I'm an independent pop culture scholar. I've edited books on James Bond, space horror films, and co-edited a collection on horror literature. I'm currently co-editing a book of essays on the Mummy franchise, kind of focusing on the Stephen Sommers 1999 blockbuster hit, and that book should release in 2026 through the University Press of Mississippi. So that's a little bit about me. And fun fact, I have 8 cats, so you might every once in a while see a cat tail, if not a cat meow, heard
I mean, who
somewhere in
doesn't love
the
a
back.
cat video? Come
I
on.
know, I know. Exactly. I'm and my little cohort, Cecily, who is usually the one that wants to be on screen. She's sitting right off screen at the moment, so maybe later she'll make an appearance.
Yeah, and I am very excited about what we are getting into. Um, Michelle recently shared that she was watching Lost for the first time. It's one of my favorite shows. It's been a while since I have gone through and watched it, so this was the perfect opportunity for us to kind of craft our ride the stream adventure. Um, and so I'm so interested to get your take on viewing the show for the first time. And everyone that's here listening, thank you. You know what Lost is. If you don't, we have a plane crash, survivors on a mysterious island, and that's all you need to know because it just keeps going from there and expanding. And so, yeah, should we just talk about the initial plot of the first episode and then dive in?
Yeah, definitely. I will say that even though Lost, I think it aired from 2004 through about 2010. I honestly know nothing about Lost. I never read anything about it. Um, Disclosure, I have actually watched up to, I think, episode 21. So the first several episodes, this is actually my second watch through. But try to be mindful. Yes, that was Cecily. Try to be mindful of the fact of what was I thinking about in the very first watch through. But after episode 21, I am going to be totally in the dark and will be talking about my views first time. So, but I don't know how it ends. I don't know anything really. Um, so I'm very anxious to talk about Lost because I was actually attracted to it because of the fact that one, all of the seasons are up, so I really like that. Um, but I also was familiar with some of the actors who either had a career prior to Lost, like Terry O'Quinn, for instance. And I think the gentleman that plays Saeed, I think I'd seen him in some other things. But many of the other characters, oh, and Dominic Monaghan, of course, from Lord of the Rings, but many of the others I hadn't seen before, or I knew them post Lost, like in Summer Holler, um, Josh Holloway, and a few others that I came across in other television series. So I was like, oh, I know them. So I kind of feel like I know these people were maybe like yourself, Travis, when you were first watching it, maybe you didn't know these actors at all. So you're kind of coming in blind or fairly blind with regards to the actors.
Yeah, I think the two that I recognized, I think Matthew Fox was on Party of Five. Not that I had watched that show, but I knew about it. And then Dominic from Lord of the Rings. I think those. Oh, Terry O'Quinn was.
Mhm.
Uh, I remember him specifically from an episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where he was had a
Okay.
guest appearance. So, um, I love the fact that you have been able to come this far without knowing
I know,
what
it's
happened.
kind of
And
crazy.
so, anyone listening, whether wherever you find Ride the Stream, I think we're gonna go on YouTube to start. Maybe initially get some podcast episodes out to wherever people listen to podcasts. But please be mindful and kind, and try to not jump ahead with spoilers in the comments. That way, Michelle can watch fresh and experience Lost like
Yes.
uh, those. And for me, I um, initially watched the first episode of Lost I ever watched with, I believe, this first episode of season four,
Mhm.
and was blown away by it. Where I was like, I had always wanted to watch it, but it just didn't work out timing. So over the next couple weeks, I was able to binge watch the previous three seasons and then catch back up, and then I was able to watch week to week from then on out. Which I will have to say, that's probably my favorite way to watch a show, is to have that time in between so you can kind of like marinate on all the things that happen. And with a show like Lost, there's always stuff to marinate on. So
Oh my gosh, is there ever? I would agree with
um
you. I didn't binge watch. I mean, I think at most I when I was starting to first watch, I think I was watching like maybe two or three episodes and then not watching anymore for the day, just so that way I could really ruminate over what had transpired and what I was learning and thinking about the characters and the events that were going on, and obviously the dynamics between the characters. Um, I know you and I have talked offline about this, but I don't see this show as necessarily bingy. And given the fact that it was originally produced in the spirit of you watch one a week and then you have time to think
yeah,
over. I think the writing I think shows that because of the strength and the things that they were revealing to you in each episode.
yeah, yeah, totally agree. Okay, let's
Jump in.
jump in. The first episode is called Pilot Part One. Um, and again, it is about a plane crash on an island where the survivors have to come to terms with the wreck and whether or not people are coming to rescue them. All while a mysterious, large, and loud sound can be heard in the jungle, as they watch trees being broken down. Um, Several characters are introduced in this episode, but it mainly follows Jack, Kate, and Charlie. And primarily, Jack is the featured character of this episode. Um, we see him lying on his back in the middle of the forest, dazed and injured, before getting to his feet, running through the jungle, and racing to the beach where he finds passengers screaming and fiery debris from the plane. Um, Viewers see Jack kind of dive into a leadership role. He's saving people from injuries, from plane parts that are falling. And in episode one, we also get our first flashback sequence, which shows Jack and Rose on the plane before and during the major turbulence before the crash. Uh, the main trio of this episode, Jack, Kate, and Charlie, they go searching for the front part of the plane and they find a pilot who is still alive. And the pilot tells them that they are off course and that anyone looking for them would be looking in the wrong place. Um, Shortly thereafter, this unknown monster rips the pilot through a broken window. Blood splatters all over the windows. And then after outracing this thing, we see Jack, Kate, and Charlie looking up into the trees to see the body of the dead pilot. Um, and that's the conclusion of the episode. And when you first watched the episode,
Mhm.
did you think, oh, yeah, I have to continue watching? Did it leave that kind of impact on you?
Definitely. Because at first, I mean, obviously I didn't know a whole lot about the show other than that it is a bunch of people that are wrecked on a beach, and they're lost. Obviously the title of the show. Um, but I also found that I couldn't pigeonhole this as just a survivor or a survival type genre show because of the fact that there was this element of what the heck is that monster? What does that sound? So I was like, well, yeah, that could be part of a survival genre is to have a monster, but I felt that it was going to be more than that because you know, there's this huge unknown threat out there. So I really felt like it kind of got into a little bit of the horror genre and also the kaiju uh, genre as well. So I was very excited because I couldn't immediately put put my finger on the pulse of one genre, which I thought really worked well um, with the show. The other thing is there's like no introduction at all. Like you said, you basically wake up with Jack on his back, looking up into this bamboo forest, trying to like get himself oriented. So I
Right.
really felt like a part of this party of people that have been stranded. Because even though I'm not on the beach along with them, I am just as unprepared, disjointed, kind of in awe of what is unfolding around me. And that so attracted me because it wasn't something that I had since or had seen before that immediately immersed me in the action and what's happening. So I really felt the immediate draw, the immediate hook. I felt like it gave just enough. Um, and obviously, when you're first watching, you're not picking up on, oh, I saw Locke over there. Oh, that's Charlie until later. You glimpse Rose and a few others, and then there's people that you don't immediately see in the first pilot episode. So yeah, I mean, I really thought it was very well done. I thought the writing was great. The writing is part of what really attracted me to the show. Obviously, the visuals. I went back and watched it last night, and I was just so impressed with the cinematography, from the first shots of Jack and
Yeah.
feeling really right there with him, to the closing shot of Kate, the over the shoulder shot of her looking down at the wings, and it's focused in on that, and then it shifts the focus to the reflection in that pool of water, and you see the dead pilot above her up in the trees. And I'm just like, they got visuals right, they got, dialogue and narrative and the pacing all right, and I was hooked.
So that leads to one of the questions I have if for you is with everything that does happen, because one moment that stands out to me is when we see Jack first go on the beach.
Mhm.
This is how they start the show, and you get that visual of him panning right and slowly going to the left. And to the left is where he sees the crash, the wreckage, the people, the screams. So that's one of my favorite moments of the show is, and then you follow him along. Is there a scene or moment for you that stood out as maybe your favorite or just something that generally left a big impact about, wow, that's unique.
Yeah, I was so focused in on characters and the character-driven narrative that one of the scenes that really stood out for me was actually Jack's monologue discussing his first ER experience to
Yeah.
Kate when they're on the beach, and she's nervous about stitching up, uh, the cut in his back, um, and just how he overcame fear. And then that becomes cyclical because at the end of the first episode, she employs the same technique to try to overcome her fear, and be able to survive. Because even though she's a very intelligent person, and seems to have a lot of inner strength, and she should be able to survive. She is dealing with a fear of an unknown, and being able to take the strength of another character and make it your own. Um, I thought was just very, very telling of what I was thinking was going to come forth. And, through the subsequent episodes that I was watching, I definitely saw more of that kind of cyclical relationships and building, finding the strengths of others where you're weak and making it, helping you to grow. So I really felt like, you know, that was a moment for her to gain strength from Jack, who seems to be a natural leader. Not only do we learn more about her, but we also learn about him. He's a doctor. He knows how to process emergencies. So, and you even see that in that initial sequence where and the camera even swoops with him, becomes his eyes, and you see he's processing, okay, what's a high priority? Okay, well, the first thing is this. Okay, I hear a woman screaming. Oh, she's pregnant. I need to go check on her next. And
Yeah.
and he is like, you know, uh obviously ER doctor, so he has to be quick on his feet, think quickly. And I think that just helped to solidify the conversation that they have, helps to solidify why he has kind of stepped into that leadership role, because you're kind of like, well, what's so special about Jack, versus maybe somebody else in the group? Why is it him that becomes kind of the leader of the group? And so, you find out that a little bit of his background in addition to, the flashback that we get. But that was the scene that stood out for me. So I did like the opening sequence though of him coming out to the beach, and you're thinking, oh, this is lovely. Wouldn't you like to vacation there? And then you've got the the wreckage and just the carnage and even the one engine is still spinning. That scared the heck out of me, honestly, to have that still running. I'm thinking, don't go in front of it. You're gonna and
Yeah,
of course, and just the fact that it, you know the one fellow ended up in front of it and got sucked through, and it blew up the entire engine. I think
yeah,
it showed that, while the planes are built to sustain life at 40,000 feet, if you get something through that engine, oh boy, that's not good. And
no.
you definitely see that. And so I think you see the resiliency and the strength, but you also see how fragile life and the structures are around us. So I felt like the writers were really hitting on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, and it seems like you touched on it. It really does seem like they do a fantastic job making the viewer feel like they're in their position, like the unknown of where they are, the trauma of the crash, and seeing people respond differently to what's going on. You see Shannon at the beginning, she's just standing there screaming. Like,
Hmm.
nothing wrong with that. I mean, I, who knows? And then you have Boone, which I don't think they identify them by name in this episode, I don't believe, but
No, I don't
he's
think so.
trying to save Rose, and Jack says, "Hey, you're doing CPR wrong."
Mhm.
And in just a little moment where Boone's trying to help, and he thinks, "Okay, if we can't get air in, does she need to be, you know, surgically w with a
The
pen in the neck?"
Yeah.
And Jack's just like, "Okay, yeah, fine, go get a pen." And he just goes off and gets a pen, because in that moment, that's what he's trying to do. He's trying to help in some way. And when he does get the pen, Jack doesn't minimize that in any way. He grabs all of them and says thanks, and I think that, in the moment, Jack is like, what are you talking about? A pen? Yeah, go get a pen. He just wants to focus on saving her,
Yeah.
and dealing with him in that moment wasn't helping. So I think overall we see a wide spectrum of people and how they're dealing with it. But I do like that we're only getting little tidbits as we focus on a few individuals more specifically. Um, and I think that really helps to kind of slowly shape the narrative, not only with the story, but who these people are. Do you have a favorite or most interesting character from the first part of the pilot?
Yeah, I think because of the fact that this was really Jack's episode, I have to say Jack because I felt like he became the most developed character, second to probably Kate, just because we get more dialogue between her and Jack on the beach when, she's doing her sewing of his cut in his back. So I really felt like we really get quite a bit of details about him. We know he's a doctor. I think we find out what Charlie's a musician. We really don't get a whole lot from anybody else. We don't even know what Kate does other than the fact that she's sewn some drapes for her apartment.
Yeah.
So we really don't know much. So I think for that I have to go with Jack, just because we do get a lot of his story um, revealed in the first episode. How about you?
I would probably say, Jack, the one thing that I was thinking that could possibly be more interesting is just the monster in the jungle.
Yeah.
Just the noise is freaky. And then at night when they're seeing like these tall trees get crumpled down by whatever's making this noise, it's so like I can't imagine even seeing that or hearing that in real life, but I can imagine their responses because they're just like, what the hell is that? So I do think Jack is the probably more interesting character because I like you said, I do appreciate he kind of gets to talk about his experience of overcoming fear. And I think that that's what everyone is going through in this episode is trying to
Yeah.
overcome this fear. So him highlighting that, like you had mentioned earlier, is just I think is essential uh, for the show, for this not just this episode, but moving forward.
Yeah, I would agree with that because I got the sense, and again, I know you and I've done a little talking offline about the pilot. Um, the fact that in this episode we get snippets, like you said, of the different characters and how they kind of cope with the trauma of the wreck. And so you see Boone, he's trying to lead, but he doesn't have what the knowledge that Jack has. He has a lifeguard license or CPR license. And Jack says, well, maybe you should think about, you know, returning that. you know.
Yeah.
But in that, we see that Boone is going to be more of a follower. Charlie, who we see is just kind of drifting around, is kind of checked out. We later find out why he's kind of checked out and is not really reacting at all. He's just kind of floating around, and is willing to help, but you have to ask him, such as Saeed asks him later to help with the fire, and he's like, "Oh yeah, of course," Hurley, getting food out of the fuselage because Jack says take care of Claire, the pregnant woman, and so he kind of takes, he has some initiative of his own. He's kind of a caring person, and so you get these little kernels of what you're probably going to see as each episode is dropped, and as their character is developed. So I like that. Saeed is resourceful. He's thinking about getting off the island. And like you said, Shannon is just standing there screaming, and it's kind of an opportunity to think about how would I react if I was in a plane crash and I'm a survivor on a tropical island. How would I be over there helping people? Would I be sitting on the beach numb? What would I be doing? And so it's an opportunity to kind of reflect on how would you react? And I think they present a lot of different ways of coping with the trauma of the wreck. And then I don't know about you, I was waiting for a big kaiju monster to come out, that first night. And I think it was more scary the fact that you didn't see anything.
The
No.
unknown, it really does kind of twist with your mind a little bit. And do you like being on, specific to this episode, do you like being on the same playing field as the characters, like not knowing what that monster is? Or do you think you prefer when some shows will like show you the bad thing, but the other people don't know what that thing is yet?
That's a great question. And I would say it really depends on what you're watching. I think in this case, for Lost, the fact that the writers intentionally try to immerse you in that experience. Um, I feel that it would be a disservice to know more than what the survivors know. So in this particular case, I was not disappointed. I thought that it kept the sense of fear, tension, um, fear of the unknown, what might be out in the forest, and whether I'd even want to go into the forest. Okay, come on, guys. Sorry, kitty cats.
Oh,
Um,
that's fine.
whether I want to even go traipsing into the forest at all, or whether I just would be the type of person that would want to stay on the beach. So I think for that, I'm glad that I didn't know what was going on. How about you?
Yeah, and I agree. I think it's more terrifying because you don't know exactly what it is. Um, and I had never thought of kaiju before, but as soon as you said that, I was like, oh, that makes complete sense. And I think it also shows that, like, um, I guess Jack, Kate, and Charlie willing to go search for the front of the plane, even though, um, there are question marks all over the place on, like, you know, do we need this many people? Should we be going? Um, and Charlie, I think I think not that they're huge comedic moments, but I feel like he does provide a little bit of levity. Like when he's wandering around on the beach during the chaos, like a piece of wreckage lands after the
Yeah.
explosion, like right behind him, and he just kind of slowly turns and looks, and that's just like, it maybe funny is not the right word, but it's like it's a shocking thing to see. And then later when he's on the trip, he with Jack and Kate, he keeps reminding Kate who he is. I'm
Mhm.
Charlie, by the way, because she's so concerned with
Yeah.
Jack and his safety. Uh,
Yeah.
so to your point earlier about kind of identifying who these characters might be, seeing him in like a humorous role, and with Hurley, he gives Claire the extra food and just shows like how kind he is. Um, and so I think the creators of the show put together an episode for a pilot. I know there's two parts to it, but I I, I think this has to be up there as arguably one of the best pilots for me personally. Just the way it's done and everything's put together, the visuals, and the overall chemistry between the cast. Um, Even though they're strangers on an island, but the way they communicate seems authentic,
Mhm.
and um, yeah, I just think that kind of helps solidify how good of an episode this is.
Yeah. Now, given the fact that you're revisiting it after, some years of watching it the last time, um, what kind of emotions do you have on revisiting the pilot after so many years? Did you actually see some new things that you hadn't seen before? Um, or maybe other insight that's new to you this time around?
Uh, I was just really excited to watch it again because it's, I think, been 5 or 6 years since I've seen it. And this is probably my third or fourth. This will be my third or fourth rewatch as I go along with you. And so it was almost as if I was able to experience it, not to the same degree, but for the first time. Because I had those same levels of anticipation because I'm excited to hear what you think. And I know, my memory is junk at sometimes, and I I'll get to re-see things that are like, oh, right, this happens. Um, and so I think it's going to be fun from that standpoint where I know I'll forget things. I know there are moments in this series that are very huge. Um, and so I'm anticipating what you're going to say,
Mhm.
how it might affect you. Um, and much like the characters on the show, everyone, reacts differently to the show. Um, but I think getting to rewatch uh this episode again reinvigorates like how much I love the show when it was on TV and the times that I'd rewatched it after that. So um, I'm excited to move forward and see, you know, where your perspective hits with each episode. Because if there was ever a time to label a show going down a rabbit hole, Lost is that show.
Well, I think it's a perfect time for it too. I think to visit this one. Um, I was wondering what you thought because I remember I think this was around the time that some shows were starting to play with intros. Like you're so used to like watching I don't know, Deep Space Nine, Next Generation, Cheers, and a lot of those shows would have kind of a real introduction. So I've really found the pilot fascinating because it really is minimal in that regard. It shows the word lost and it kind of twists, so you could read a lot into that. I think I clocked the credits not even coming in until about the 7 minute mark, and they were just down at the bottom, kind of unobtrusive to your watch. And I know in subsequent episodes it continues that way. Um, do you think that well, I'll come at it from the point that I feel like that really helps this kind of show that you don't know anything about it. And so the intro doesn't like say, hey, you're coming into a bar. Everybody says Norm, as they come into the
Yeah,
bar. And so you know who the characters are and things like that. And you're really left in the dark. And I was wondering your thoughts about that.
I I like that question because I've never really thought of it that way. I just appreciated how short it was, like the lingering or continuing drone of sound that goes along with the lost flipping back and forth. Um, Kind of ominous, but I like how it's quick, and it goes right into the episode, and the main focus is the show. And on the flip side, something I've always enjoyed about the show, like I hadn't thought about the intro that way, but the way the show ends,
Mhm.
where you have this scene and then it goes to black. I think is it Lost at the end there too? When it you have a final scene and then you hear the big clap or drum beat and then it's like all black goes to black.
Yeah, I don't think it does the Lost again. I think
Okay.
it's just at the beginning.
But I always that always left an impression like, wow, that's how it ends.
Hmm.
Um, and that always made me, I don't know, always made me appreciate the next episode coming. Um, because it just hits you like, ooh, that's the end of the episode,
Yeah.
and you have to process what just happened. So yeah, I think the shorter intro, the minimalist style of it is, I can't imagine them trying to do some type of hokey intro with pictures of the characters or something long running with a theme song or something like that. It just what they put in, I think, just fits the the style of the show. Um, and I can't imagine it being something different.
I can't either. And, a point that you made earlier was the chemistry amongst the people. We don't get it a lot here because it's really focused on Jack and a little bit on Kate and others, but we don't get a whole lot of time, interacting with too many of the other characters, but I think um, in subsequent watches in the episodes coming up, you definitely get more of that chemistry, and you can't imagine. I mean, Josh Holloway as Sawyer. I couldn't imagine anybody else being Sawyer, for instance. And I do agree. I think the chemistry is just amazing. Additionally, I like the fact of how international the cast is. Especially when you're talking 2004. That's not that long from, the events of 9/11 and the aftermath and the wars and things like that. To take on an international cast and to, um, explore these where these people are and their cultures. I mean, because we do have, the Korean couple that only speaks Korean. Well, and Saeed and all the Australian and the New Zealand individuals that are in the show. So it's really a quite a nice mix, and particularly given the time frame that the show was being aired, I think it also t was taking chances that an American audience would accept and welcome a variety of characters from different parts of the world, as a way to get to know these other cultures through a television show.
Yeah, and I believe it's the next second episode, the part two of the pilot, I think, where there is that conflict with Sawyer and Saeed, where
Yeah.
he makes ridiculous accusations of Saeed being the
The terrorist.
terrorist or the one. And so
Yeah.
it's very um I don't know what the right word is, but it you don't want anyone to think that way. Um, but I'm sure there were people at that time who were, you know, who maybe felt that way like Sawyer does. I don't know, but but it also makes it so Sawyer is that kind of unsavory, unlikable person. Um, and then I think that's what, again, the way they produced this one episode is how they continue to do it. And so you continue to get these bits of different characters along the way. And I think that's how just from this episode, you kind of get this attachment to Jack, just from telling that one story. And then you get these, as the series continues, you get those attachments to other characters too.
Yeah, this is one of those television series where I feel like at the end and along the way, I'm going to be so invested and attached to all these characters. And if something happens to a character, how am I going to feel? How am I going to how am I going to deal with the grief of losing that character from the show? Because I imagine that things will happen, and the shifts of dealing with and trying to survive when you don't know what's out there in the forest, and just weird stuff. You could step on a jellyfish or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but there's so many things. And so far, we don't know if they have got good first aid. Is there an herbalist that can kind of help, traditional medicine that Jack knows, that will be able to supplement. Those are the things that'll come out in, subsequent episodes. How will they survive, and do they all survive? And how do you deal with that? I remember watching Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and it makes me think a couple of things. One, I can remember, I really like the character Angel, and when he flips, and the fact that he loses his humanity. For me, that was like, oh my God, that was so horrible. And trying to deal with a character that I really cared about is now something completely different. And I could well imagine this will be the same way with Lost. The other thing, and I know for you because you picked up on season 4, so you were actually watching as they were televising. This is one of those series where I do wish that I was watching it at the time because I feel like I missed out on the fan base around it and things that were being discussed around the water cooler or, even in the various, fan conventions and things like
Yeah.
that. Like we were talking offline, I went to San Diego Comic-Con in 2008, and I do think that there was a bunch of lost stuff, but I wasn't I wasn't into it at that time, so I didn't pick up on anything from that. So I feel like I kind of missed out on some of the dialogue as a result. Same with Buffy. Like I really wish that watched Buffy at the time because I think
Yeah.
the conversations that were happening, and honestly, I think that's part of why I'm anxious that we're starting with this because it's such a strong television series that maybe others that are watching us or listening to us maybe haven't watched in a long time, or maybe, God forbid, they haven't watched it either, like me. And not to plug Netflix, but they do have it over on Netflix. Um, but maybe they'll want to join our dialogue and leave comments or, whatever, or talk with your friends. If not, exchange with us. But to kind of bring up that dialogue again and talk about, the you know, what this show was about and how not only was it relevant then, but I think there's relevancy today in a lot of these strong television series because of the themes that they're exploring are kind of timeless. And I feel Lost is one of those. So I'm on completely on the same page that this is a unique show. It's one of those ones that stand the test of time and ages very well, doesn't become dated. Um, so I'm looking forward to talking about all the episodes from pilot number 1 with
Yeah.
you. Um, so I'm real excited about that, and you know, it'll be interesting how what we'll be reading, and I'll be anxious to hear how does your take maybe change from your prior watches as you watch it this time around with me.
Yeah, I'll be interested to see how rewatching it again will just I'm assuming just reaffirm my attachments for the characters. Because I think that is one of the strengths of the show is they are fantastic characters, amazing moments, and um, and I think the writers they are the ones that are putting in that dialogue. Um, but man, those actors just sell it so well. So I'm excited to see uh, what happens as we continue talking about this, um, and yeah, I think there's nothing left to say. Just be pumped about diving back into Lost.
Definitely. And for everyone that's watching this episode, more are going to be coming. I think we're talking about dropping one a week. I did notice that I think I'm going to be consistently small through this entire episode.
Are
So,
you?
yeah, for me, since we're recording from my screen, I think I'm going to be always small. Maybe not, but I'll check on the when I go back and relook at it. But I'll definitely figure out so we're both on the screen equally. Um,
Yeah,
so,
definitely.
yeah, I just noticed that. So sorry to our viewers. who didn't get to see all the cattails and things like that, are really small as they went by. But we'll get that fixed. But otherwise, we hope that you enjoyed our premiere episode of Lost Season 1, Pilot Part 1, as well as the premiere of Ride the Stream. We hope that you'll ride the stream with us as we continue our discussion of Lost over the many coming weeks. There's 121 episodes, I think. So we'll be talking for quite a while about Lost.
Love it.
So do join us and definitely subscribe. Hit the notification bell as everybody on YouTube tells you. And we will be also doing podcast. But this was our quickest and easiest way to get our views out there and our discussion of Lost and our passion for Lost, or for Lost out there to you guys and gals.
Nailed it.